So my name is Admir Tuzović. I'm CEO of App Impact company. You have probably used our system in the past few days, so any comments regarding how the system works, any ideas, please feel free to share. And today I'm going to talk about Microsoft Azure DevOps. The title was different a couple of days ago, but Microsoft has decided to rename the product once again, so now it's called Microsoft Azure DevOps. So once more, thanks to all the sponsors for providing with means to do this event 1 year again. So let's go straight to the session because we have a very limited time and we have a lot to cover. So something's missing there, but should be okay. So about me again, I'm a Chief Executive Officer, Pluralsight author, and also Microsoft's most valuable professional for Microsoft Azure platform. I've been developing, actually coding for more than 25 years. Currently, I'm involved mostly in web development and cloud development. So that's the perspective from which I will be speaking. I'm not a project manager, I'm not a test engineer. However, I will do some reflection on both those perspectives when I do a demo of the product itself. So the expectations. We are startups, so my idea was to share the ideas with the startups as well that want to do products that are available as software as a service. So my talk will basically be what should you do as a next step when you create a product, how to create proper process for your product. The second group that I'm targeting is the engineers that are doing DevOps, like professionally, but they are not aware of what is Microsoft offering. And the third group are the students or researchers that are interested in the topic and they want to get started with some platform that offers it. So for those that are experienced DevOps engineers already using Azure DevOps or TFS, we have limited time, so we won't be able to go too much into details. Okay. So first, the concept of DevOps, I'm not going to spend much time, but generally, there are a lot of questions, what is considered DevOps nowadays? So basically, from the Microsoft's perspective, they consider the following: the planning and tracking, which means everything related to the project, but not from the technical perspective, which means project management, tracking of user stories and everything. Then the next step, of course, is the development. So everything involved in the development, the branching, the flows, and everything that you have to actually decide when you start working on the software product. Also the build and test phase to ensure that there are no errors going to production and everything. Deployment, when do you deploy? What are the preconditions that deployment is ready to be? Will you use the staging or not? Will you deploy on the single tenant or multiple tenants? Basically all the decisions regarding the deployment itself. Preparation of configuration if you want to have automated like infrastructure as a code, so that you specify what kind of infrastructure should be prepared before the code is deployed. Operation, once everything is up and running, the information that you gather from the operating system, and then again monitoring and learning from the errors and anything that you're measuring basically to return it back to planning and tracking for the next iteration, which in general forms the continuous delivery. So basically this is how the Microsoft looks at the DevOps. Historical evolution of the Microsoft's product for the, let's say, team collaboration between the project manager, test engineers, system engineers, and developers, of course, goes like this. So this is on-premises, basically the installations that you drop in your local data center or at your client, and the cloud version, which was not always there. So in 2005, there was extension to Visual Studio to development environment, which was called the team system. What you can notice here is that the next version of this product was 3 years later. Basically, back then it was quite okay to have a release every 3 to 5 years. Now things have started to change, so the span between the two versions has started to reduce. So in 2010, the Team Foundation server was first time released under that name, which is the name that is active in the present day. And in 2012, when the next iteration was created, Microsoft has decided to put some of its features to the cloud. So we got Team Foundation service. So basically, this is where the parallelism starts between the on-premises installations and the cloud version. In 2013, they decided to rebrand it to Visual Studio Online to have everything around the Visual Studio as their platform, primary choice for development for developers, primary choice for development tool for developers. So basically, everything went around the Visual Studio. In 2015, there was another release, but what happened in 2016 is another rename. Again, they were trying to move away from Team Foundation because everyone was associated with Team Foundation as the Microsoft's version control. At that point, actually, the version control that Microsoft was using was already used in parallel with the Git, but people didn't really know it. So today we have a fourth rename of the cloud version. Why am I doing this? Is basically when you encounter the tutorials or the articles or demos, anything, and you see some of these, especially this one, there is very little difference between Visual Studio Team Services tutorials done at the beginning of this year and Azure DevOps tutorial done a couple of days ago. Basically, it's the same product. So when you see the name, you should know that it's the same product, basically. So what is Azure DevOps now? They rebranded everything. So they now have a couple of things that together make up the Azure DevOps. First thing is Azure Boards. I'm starting with this one because this is related to planning and tracking. So Azure Boards is everything you need if you want to plan the software development product. So work items, backlog, everything. The next step are the Azure Repos. Basically the place, once you start working on the product, the place where you will drop your code, where all developers will drop the code, where the integration will happen and everything else. The next part is the Azure Artifacts. We will get there. Basically, just remember it's related to packaging of software and everything related to all the other dependencies that your software has. Then there are Azure Pipelines, which is very interesting to system engineers. And finally, Azure Test Plans for test engineers. So before we continue further, let me just show you how it looks if the internet is fine. So how does the Azure DevOps basically functions? So I have already created an account. You can create it for free. There is no credit card or anything that you need to enter. And then you can start simply by creating a project. This is a bit blurry. Can you see it? All right, so you name the project the way you like. So let's say live demo. At the beginning, you need to select, is it going to be a public or private? Public will clearly be something that will be available to general public. This is usually used for the open source project. Private is something that you want to use if you build your own product and you want the code to be safe. By default, the Git is selected option, and the Agile is the methodology that will be used for project management. You can, of course, change it. Out of the box, you have Agile, CMMI, and the Scrum. And as for the version control, you can choose Git or Team Foundation version control. This is important, but we'll go back to that later on. So I'm going to keep it as private, keep Git, and use Scrum. And let's create a project. Basically, they wanted to simplify everything to have a series of steps that you need to follow. So while this is running, I'm going to show you what are the pipelines part of this presentation. So I have a small app that is just Hello World ASP.NET application. And currently, I'm doing this because actually it takes time to get it shipped again with the changes. So currently, it says welcome to Bosnia Agile Day 2018. And this is, if you can read, this is a staging environment. I also have the same app also hosted on the Azure, which is in the production environment, the same text. I have a Visual Studio here. This is the text. So I'm going to do a minor change just to show how the pipeline is working in the background. So we'll say, let's hope this works. So this is minor change. I'm just going to save it. Go here, go to commit this change. Commit something else like label change number 9. Commit. Do a sync. This is basically, I'm doing it from Visual Studio. You can do this from the command line, from any editor. It doesn't matter. Basically, I'm using Git in the background. So let me do a sync on this one. And here is my, let's go to the pipelines. I have a development pipeline here. This has apparently been pushed already, so it's going to build now and start and move to the release pipeline. I'm going to get to the pipeline part itself. I'm just showing you that I've just done a commit from my Visual Studio to Azure DevOps. Commit has been detected, and now the build is starting to build my code to have it shipped for the deployment. Let's go back to slides. So why should you consider Azure? Okay, this went bad. Just a second. This is like full hour presentation in 30 minutes, so ignore all the speed and everything. I hope that you will get enough information to get interested in this later. There is no way to explain you everything right away. So it's comprehensive, meaning I've shown you there are 5 pieces of Azure DevOps. Basically, all the perspectives from the software development of a product are there, so you don't have to use third-party solutions. It's affordable, meaning you can start for free. You get a lot of options. If you want something else or your team grows, you can add more options. It's reliable, meaning Microsoft is using it for years for their products, and you know what the Microsoft is, so you're not playing with some experiment. This is real stuff. It's also extensible in case that you want to move out from Microsoft system or you need some extension like time tracking or anything else that you want to add. There is a full marketplace of add-ons for the Azure DevOps. It's secure. You will see you can add security on many different places in the pipelines where you can say who is approving something. Also, it's open, meaning that it's built to support any language and any platform. Currently, there are some built-in options. You can add the others if you don't prefer these built-in ones. But basically, the goal is to have it open for everything. Now, when it comes to Azure Boards that I have mentioned, the first pillar, you can create work items. Depending on which flow you select, the work items are different. So if you select Agile or Scrum on CMI, not the same work items will be available. Microsoft used the term work item for everything that you add as an item that developers will be working on, or the test engineers. Also, there are boards basically built in, ready, just add stuff on them, add the statuses that you like. The backlog, of course, where you can keep the ideas and everything that is still not ready to be done. Also sprints if you're using Scrum, basically everything that you're currently using. How many of you are using Atlassian, for example? All right, so we are using Atlassian as well. So Jira and Confluence combined. We have been observing the Azure Boards to do comparison. The only thing that we lack the way we have in Atlassian solutions is time tracking. But the rest, we have checked, everything is basically prepared there. So if you want to move, if your organization allows it, so far we haven't seen anything missing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Queries also, if you want to build any kind of reports, how is the status of the project, where are you with your plans and your deliveries, you can build queries over any parameter that you have on any of the work items. So the Azure Repos is part that is interested to developers. And I don't know, maybe I had the bad luck, but I frequently hear this sentence, which is, I prefer Git over Team Foundation Server or Visual Studio Online. I don't like Team Foundation Server. This frequently comes from developers that are not in the Microsoft world. For someone who is in touch with Microsoft terminology, is pretty clear. Here it isn't, because in the past there was huge difference between the Git and the TFS. So I'm just going to do a small comparison to get you into Microsoft world. So what you actually can compare is Azure Repos and the GitHub, because both are registries of repositories. So this is the thing that you can actually compare, what Azure Repos offers and what the GitHub is offering. But GitHub is using the Git as version control system. So GitHub and Git is not the same thing. Git is something that Linus wrote. GitHub is a platform that allowed you to have repositories that work on the Git. With Azure Repos, you get the same thing. You get the Git. Also, you can use it the same way you use it with the GitHub. And this is new, and that's why confusion arises, because in the past, it wasn't possible. But with the Git, you also get TFVC, which is Team Foundation Version Control. That is different kind of version control system that is also available. So when you work with Azure Repos, you can pick between the two. But when you work with GitHub, it's Git basically for you. So the main decision here wasn't really about the protocol for version control. It was whether you want to work with Microsoft or not. That was the decision. Do you like the Microsoft or not? I don't know if you're aware, but this year happened a major transition. Basically, Microsoft bought the GitHub, so you don't even have an option to choose, do you like Microsoft or not? You also have a Bitbucket, of course, or other providers, but the two main ones are owned by the Microsoft. And the story basically went like this. If you read the articles, how did it end up that Microsoft buys the GitHub, that is primary hosting place of the Google? Basically, GitHub was on the marketplace. The Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, was really open to everyone, entirely changed everything that Steve Ballmer was doing for years, changed the story, opened up to everyone. And the CEO of of GitHub. Chris said, hey, I like you, you're like super cool. They decided that they like each other. They engaged in negotiations, and basically GitHub was sold for $7.5 billion. And now it's owned by Microsoft. The goal behind this, you will see later in the pricing model, is that Microsoft wanted to offer something for free for open source community, and they didn't have a mean how to do it, because Visual Studio Online was private and they didn't have public option. Now with the GitHub, they have it. So let's continue. Let's see how, actually, before we continue with artifacts, let's see how the build is doing. Maybe it's done. Yeah, this one has been completed. So this was a build pipeline. Here you cannot actually read it, but it says builds. And there is also now the release pipeline. So I have set up the second pipeline, which says, okay, when the build is done, basically trigger my release pipeline and start deploying whatever came out from the build to the development, to the environments where the application should be hosted. If the builds have passed. If they didn't, it shouldn't be deployed. So currently I have the message that says, this is really blurry. It says, you need to trust me that it says pending approval on staging stage. So if I go to this release, which was triggered automatically, let me just have it. Okay, so this is what I have set up. I have continuous deployment. It's triggered whenever there is a new successful build on the master branch. I could have changed that to say that when there is a successful build on some other branch, but I've chosen to be master for the simplicity of the demo. And currently, I have that indication that it has been deployed on the staging, but I need to approve it for production. So if I go to the website, if everything is working okay, it says, let's hope this works. So this is on the staging. But if I go to production and reload, it still says, welcome to Boston Agile Day. So basically, as a tester, I could go here, have a task, and see that everything is working okay on the staging. And if everything is okay, as it should, I go to pipeline and say, I approve this to be on the production. I have actually set up this. This is not built in there. I have actually went there when I was building pipeline and said, okay, there is a pre-approval before deployment to staging, to production. I could automate that as well. It depends on what kind of process have you established. Also, there could be multiple tenants that I want to deploy. I could say that, like, okay, approve a deployment on these three, and then deploy to the second two, because these three are like not so risky, that these two are requiring more and more testing, so which could be like test those three production tenants and then go to these two. So we're going to wait for this to get completed. In the meantime, let's talk about Azure Artifacts. How many of you are actually building the packages from your libraries that you reuse later on some solutions and everything? Okay? Like you have a library that you use on every single project, and then you are tired of writing it and you want to pack it up and ship it on other projects and don't think about it. Like everything we do is based on that. There are some stuff that you really don't want to write 10 times. And this is what Azure Artifacts is about. You can write your own artifacts, basically have projects that build into DLLs that you later on include in your solution, or you can use artifacts that are external. So these are the typical package types that Azure Artifacts support. These are the NuGet, which are primarily .NET, actually only .NET, built only for .NET. There is NPM, of course, for Node.js, and there is a Maven. So what Azure Artifacts supports are the private feeds, meaning your own libraries that you want to keep private. You have them on the private feeds, no one can access them. And also there are public feeds that you can add, meaning the npm.js or the nuget.org, that you can add to become also in your Azure Artifacts. Why would you do that? So this is nuget.org or npm.js. It's a registry of packages. Basically, everyone is dropping everything there. If you want to use a package, in Visual Studio, you would connect to Node, NuGet. In Node, you would use npm to pull out the package that you require. So your developers are using these packages by going through the system that delivers them. And at some point, basically packages are here. At some point, theoretically, they could have a maintenance or go down, or pretty much anything can happen. If this goes down, you are unable to pull the packages. So if you have a build process, everything, timeline, scheduled, it can crash, not because it's your fault, but because the registry went down from whatever reason. The second scenario is actually even worse. You depend on a package, and the author has decided that it's not going to support it and removed it, or the registry removed it because it was insecure. Basically, many reasons why package could no longer be publicly available. And then what? You depend on it. You have a build scheduled for tomorrow. Client is requesting, and the package is gone. So that's where the Azure Artifacts come to play. So this is the same image, except we have severed the connection over there and placed in the goal is to have packages closer to our developers, not here behind something that we cannot control, but closer to our development environment. And this is what the Azure Artifacts is. Basically, it's a cache of all dependencies that your solution has. So if you add external sources as upstreams, everything that is pulled in is going to be cached. So if everything goes down here, the nuclear attack, anything, the packages are available at your Azure Artifacts. So that's the reason why you should use it. The Azure Pipelines is the fourth piece. Is basically the service that allows you continuous delivery and continuous integration. So continuous integration, that code is built, tested, everything is ready, and continuous delivery, that is continuously delivered on the locations that you specify. So it's built to support any languages. You will see when you create it actually detects on your repository which code are you using and offers you right away everything that you need, but you can of course change it. So any language. Also any repository. So even if you're on the Bitbucket on Atlassian, you can connect to the Bitbucket repository and pull the code from there and then have it built. You can deploy it pretty much anywhere. So on premises, basically you have servers somewhere in your building or on any cloud or in container registries like Docker Hub, which is not really hosting, but actually hosting your Docker container image over there. So you just basically decide where you want to deploy it. Important thing about the pipelines is that you always need an agent. The agent that's going to build stuff and agent that's going to deploy it. So there are some options that you get for free, some options that you need to buy. Also, the public packages, we have mentioned that. As for the testing, depending on the tiers, you can have or not these test plans. You can purchase them per user. But basically, what these test plans offer you to build not only a test, not only to write a test, but basically to build an entire plan of tests that have to be done for every single release. If some tests are repeatable, then you add them as shared tests that are available for every test plan. So what you can do with this part of the Azure DevOps is do manual testings. You can request stakeholder feedback. This is really important for those that are building products. You want to know what your clients think. So you can add ability for them to submit feedbacks on every release. So you can then convert the feedback directly to be next work item. Also continuous testing, if you have tests that are written already in the code that you want to be executed every time. Unit and functional testing, if you want to see code coverage, how much code is actually covered with the tests. All that is available. You need to configure it basically on the test manager. And the load testing, you have, on most tiers, you have 20,000 virtual machine units, which means you can spin up 20,000 machines to run for 1 minute and attack your site, basically, to stress it out, basically to see the things that you cannot see with unit and functional testing. Is it gonna work when there are many users? All this is included in the test plan. So let me go just through the pricing. For open source, it's free. You get unlimited users. So that was the option when you selected between the public and private. If you select public, it's open source. So you have unlimited build time. Basically, the build that was happening on the cloud, I just pushed the code. It wasn't built. That time is available unlimited. Also, you get 10 parallel jobs, unlimited minutes for integration, and unlimited number of public Git repositories. For the small teams, meaning your startup, you have just started, price is also free. You get 5 users. You get one pipeline that you can create it, like the one that I was just using. And there is a limit on number of hours for builds. So 30 hours you can use per month. That's it. You cannot build indefinitely. You actually have to pay to get unlimited number. Unlimited number of private Git repos, so no one can access them but the people that you decide that you want to give access to. Access to Azure Artifacts, and this part with load testing. And unlimited number of stakeholders. For large teams, these are the price ranges. First 10 users are actually really cheap. Then when you start to increase, the price goes up, then it goes down again, so it's not linear. So first users are cheap, the next wave are expensive, then it goes cheaper. But basically the maximum that you will pay per user per month is $7.5. You get the same with the pipelines, unlimited repos, Azure Artifacts, load testing, unlimited stakeholders. And this is the important part. If you have MSDN from your company or privately from whatever reason, you get free access. So we as a Microsoft partner have a lot of MSDNs available to us. So for us, this all is free. So we get the full team without any additional cost. Also, for the pipelines, there are two things that you need to remember. There is MS-hosted pipeline, and there is your own hosted pipeline. Basically, it depends where the agent that is building stuff is hosted. If it's MS-hosted, then you get one free with all the packages. And if you want to purchase additional one, if you want to build stuff in parallel, not to have sequentially built stuff, then if you want to add an additional parallel job, you have to actually buy next agent for $40 per month. For your own hosted option, when you host the agent, install it on your own environment, you actually have to pay $15 on top of what you install. So there is a difference in the price, but basically, what's the difference? In MS-hosted environment, Azure is giving you infrastructure. In your environment, you're responsible for infrastructure. So these are a couple of resources that you can use to get started with this. The point of these slides is it's free. You can start, try testing it, explore it. There are a lot of resources. And let's see, we are done with the slides. So let's just see if the build went here. Let's just refresh it. Yeah, it worked. So this is the pipeline that was built. It's a simple one. You can add stuff. This is the part where I have added the prover, basically. Okay. I can't see from here. Pretty much there are a lot of, this is the release. I cannot actually change here. I would have to go to pipeline itself and change it. So I need to stop because there's next session. Do you have any questions regarding this? Is anyone actually interested to look at this after this session? All right, that's good. So I'm available for the questions. I'm going to just turn off this for the, thank you.